Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another album review. My name is Christian Eschbach. Okay, so we are here with Ozzy Down to Earth. Paid $10 for this album. If you're one of my regular viewers, you already know this. I mentioned it in a previous review. Um, no, it was not worth the $10 for me. It was for Tracy. Tracy likes this album. Tracy's very fond of this album. I am not, but I can tell you why. And it took me going through this album to really finally nail down what it was that really threw me off. And it was halfway through the listen, right before I did this recording, I finally figured it out. All right, so I'm going to start by going through the tracks here. So bear with me. I'm going to get into this as I go. Okay, so we got the album opens up with Gets Me Through, which isn't bad. The problem is it's basically a rehash of Perry Mason to me in a manner of speaking. Musically, not lyrically. Musically, it's kind of and not a good rehash either. Like, it's okay. It's kind of like Ozzy by numbers, you know? And that's one of the biggest problems with this album. Not just that, but we're going to keep on. Facing Hell follows that up. Now, I do like, Gets Me Through's got a good medium, thick, chunky kind of vibe and feel going on it, which is kind of nice. And then you get to Facing Hell, and that one's a lot more kind of harsh and metally and, a little more abrasive and energetic and faster, which is nice. But then you automatically drop into Dreamer. Okay, now, Dreamer is basically Ozzy's Imagine, which is cool. I know Ozzy's a huge John Lennon fan. I really enjoy John Lennon myself, so I appreciate that. Here's my problem with it. We're talking about Ozzy. Road to Nowhere feels like a great appropriate Ozzy kind of slower song. Dreamer feels weird. I think I would have rather heard Ozzy just cover Imagine. Maybe. Maybe not. Tough call on that one. All right. Either way, Dreamer, not a bad tune, but not a song that works for me, especially not when it comes to Ozzy. No Easy Way Out. I found forgettable. That I Never Had, forgettable. Part 1, slow as hell, forgettable. Then we hit Junkie. And this one made me perk up in certain ways, and in other ways I just kind of went, whatever. But it was on this song. No, not on the song. It was on the next song, sorry. Running Out of Time. That it finally clicked, and I realized what was wrong with this album. The drumming. They got Mike Borden on this album, Faith No More fame. Okay, so the guy can play. No qualms about his actual drumming. It would be the direction he would have been given as a drummer on how to play for this album and how they want it to sound. Most of this album basically, and I'm not saying he's playing straight 4/4 or playing straight eighth notes in a 4/4, but most of this album really could have benefited from a slight swing to it. Running Out of Time is where I noticed it. Running Out of Time really should have had a bit of a swing beat to it. But I also don't like the drums themselves that were used on a lot of this album as I'm listening to it. The drums were just not the right drums on this album. It just, they should have been deeper. They should have been heavier. The cymbals, like when I'm hearing the ride being used specifically, and I'm hearing it, I'm like, that ride sounds all wrong, way wrong. It's too bright. It's not. It should have a swing going off of it instead of a straight 8 going on it, and it was just kind of really. That's where I really realized it, and then I had to start looking. I'm like, okay, so who's the producer on the album? And the producer, whose name I have now forgotten, crud. Sorry, guys, I have to pull up the book here. Um, the producer on this album was Tim Palmer, who also did the mixing on the album, who also co-wrote most of the album. Guess who I am blaming for the entire problem I have with this album? Yes, Tim Palmer. Entirely. There was also another name I had recognized on here, Marty Friedrichsen, who also helped co-write a lot of songs. And it's weird because I couldn't figure out where I knew the name was from until I went and looked online. And then I saw it, and he co-wrote on the Nine Lives album, Aerosmith Nine Lives, which is an album I very much enjoyed. But then I realized he was involved with some other Aerosmith stuff, and I went, oh no. All right. So then, okay, so running out of time, I have this big discovery, and I realize what all is going on. Then I hit Black Illusion, which wasn't bad. Alive was kind of okay. Can You Hear Them finishes off the album, which wasn't bad either, I guess. There really isn't a single song on this album I put on a greatest hits album, greatest hits package. I know I've seen Gets Me Through on there, and I've seen Dreamer on greatest hits package. Nope, nah, not working for me, not doing anything for me. I'm not gonna say that this is a bad album. It's not a bad album. If I had paid $5 or $6 for it, I might not have as many issues as I have. But paying $10 was too much for me. Tracy, on the other hand, was fine with it, man. She, like I said, Tracy really likes it. The two of us were sitting here listening to it yesterday afternoon sometime. And we were both, talking back and forth while the album was going on. She was saying what she liked about it, and I was just saying how, and honestly, the drumming isn't boring, but it's got no flavor. It could have been easily done with computer programming. They didn't need to use a live drummer for it. That's how the drums sound to me. It sounds like it could have been easily done by a drum machine. And once again, Mike Borden, good drummer, man. I like Faith No More. I think the drumming in Faith No More is one of the best things about Faith No More. And the drumming on here is not bad. It's just so mechanical sounding. There's no flavor. There really is no flavor. It's put to a metronome. There's no flavor. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with putting it to a metronome, but there's no flavor. Like I said, where there should be a little swing going on, it's just straight, man. And when there's just little flourishes that should be in there, they're not there. Like that little flavor lets you know who's on drums. And the worst part is this album has Zakk Wylde on guitar. Not a single writing credit to Zakk Wylde. Zakk was hired to come in and play someone else's stuff and do Zakk Wylde solos. And you got Rob Trujillo on bass. Now, Rob did actually write on some of the songs. And funny enough, some of the songs that he wrote on are some of the ones that I mentioned kind of pop out a little bit. Not all of them. But it's nice to see Rob have some writing credits on here. But even then, I know what Rob's like on bass, and he can really lay down some flavorful bass, and I didn't find there was much flavor going on here. And I should also mention this would have been the last album that Rob Trujillo would have done with Ozzy before jumping over to Metallica. Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna blame Tim Palmer for the reason I don't like this album. 100% on his shoulders. I really felt the album was just kind of Ozzy by numbers. So if you like Ozzy and you like Ozzy by numbers, go ahead, pick up that one. One of the things, I'm going to go with this really quickly, mentioning jumping to Metallica and mentioning Tracy. It's funny because one of the reasons Tracy said that she likes this album so much is it goes back to high school for her, which makes sense because I know a lot of people that will defend the Saint Anger album, saying, well, yeah, but it was my album that came out when I was in high school, man. I just automatically, have a love for it. It's nostalgic that way. So it makes sense, It's just like when me and Tracy were talking about this, I had said No More Tears has got that. She goes, oh, I don't like No More Tears. I said, no, I mean the album, not just the song. Because the song No More Tears is just, that one got overplayed over the years. Way overplayed. But the album itself was a fantastic album. But is it Ozzy's best? No. Ozzy's best was before that, even. um, all right, so I do have two more Ozzy albums I have to cover. I have to cover Scream and I have to cover Patient 9. I do not own either of those albums, so I have to get my hands on them to cover them. And I am hoping to cover them before the big farewell show, so I can be completely over and done with Ozzy at the very end there. Let me know what you guys think. Drop me a line down below in the comments. Am I being too hard on this album? Am I not being hard enough? What's your favorite Ozzy album? That's in the comment section for. Let me know. Like button, subscribe button, bell for notifications. There's a couple links down there as well. Check those out. That'd be great. Thank you. Otherwise, folks, peace, love, take care.